Hello, it's Scott Manley here, and today I am doing the weekly Reddit challenge, and that challenge is the budget cuts challenge. Now, they said you have to build a rocket using less than 20 parts and take it to a moon of Kerbin, which of course the obvious target is Minmus. There is a hardcore mode, which says 10 parts or less. I have half that again, and I'm doing 5 parts. That is a small capsule. It has the small Rockamax tank. We have a nuclear engine, the large Rockamax tank, and of course a mainsail. Now, there is no separator in this, as you may have noticed. But first of all, I'm launching on mainsail power. Because there is no separator, it means that fuel wants to be drained from the top tank into the bottom tank. There's no way to disable fuel flow in the LVN engine, so I have to pump fuel forwards. However, in this configuration, there's something about the aerodynamics, the very limited aerodynamics that Kerbal Space Program has, which causes the thing to flip through 180 degrees once I pick up any speed. So I have to stay very close to my forward attitude and also try to keep the fuel pumping forward, also manage the thrust. This is a very hard thing to try, and I honestly won't be surprised if you try this yourself and mess it up repeatedly. So once we get higher and higher, we of course have to cut the thrust back because the drag is dominating. But at some point we're going to throttle up a little, and when we're going to watch the fuel in the top right, and when the liquid fuel reaches 720, that is when we want to shut off the mainsail and switch over to the nuclear engine. The problem is the nuclear engine is of course attached to the tank behind it. When that happens, we, of course, will be firing our nuclear engine straight into the main fuel tank, which will, of course, be a blowtorch of heat that will hopefully destroy the tank and thereby remove the need for the separator. So anyway, we're getting ready to prime the nuclear engine, cutting off that, throttling up, and we can see this thing is not wanting to steer straight because there's no thrust coming out of it. And we are now cast free from our launch vehicle. Now, we are not out of the woods yet. We are not going nearly fast enough for orbit. We do not have enough thrust to counteract gravity. We have to try and keep going, vertically and sideways, laterally, get enough velocity so we can actually get into orbit before we fall back to the planet. And this, if you do not get up fast enough on that initial launch, then it's entirely possible that you will fail to get into orbit. So this entire first launch sequence, this is the whole part. This is the only thing that I've done at regular speed because it takes so damn long. Now we switch to 4 times regular speed, and yeah, you can see I'm sitting at about a 30 degrees attitude, and picking up lateral velocity slowly. We're aiming for just over 100 kilometer orbit, and that should be possible. And now you can see the time counting down very slowly. 9, 8, 7. We're about to pass apoapsis, but we keep burning upwards. Of course, because we're burning upwards, we're burning at we're getting steering losses. We're losing about 20% of our thrust because we're thrusting off center. But that off center thrust is giving us about 50% vertical thrust, so it's cutting down our vertical acceleration significantly, and thereby buying us time to get into orbit. Now, if we had followed the periaps, or the prograde, vector directly, we would get into an orbit using less fuel, but that orbit, of course, would only happen if it was a point source we were orbiting. Since there's a planet there, it's entirely possible we would end up pummeling into that and dying. So now, we are safely in orbit, so we skip forwards to having run some many orbits around the planet using time acceleration. 128 days later, we are now set to head off towards Eve. And I don't mean Eve Online, I mean Eve, the planet in Kerbal Space Programming. The purple planet. Not home to the purple planet eater. Purple people planet eater. Wait, the purple planet home to the purple people eater. Never mind, that's a very silly thing. Anyway, we're heading outwards, picking up velocity. This is all going to be 4 times speed from this point on, simply because the whole thing is half an hour. It would be 2 hours if I wasn't doing 4 times normal speed. And I am supposed to be doing things like taking kids to a birthday party and wrapping presents, and instead I'm doing this Reddit challenge because I know I can do it. I know I can do myself proud. Actually, I mean, this is, of course, an evolution of the 7-part launcher I used a while back. The difference being that we have no separator and we have, one single tank instead of 2 tanks. So we've saved 2 parts, right? And this should be able to get us to Eve, and of course to its moon, Gilly, which has the lowest gravity of any moon in the Kerbin system, which means it's great. Look at us saying farewell to Kerbin. We shall return, hopefully. And hopefully we shall return in one piece. Or at least a small number of pieces which are not scattered too far across. As long as the cockpit's intact, then we can pretend that it was all a bit litho-breaking, right? Yes. Anyway, so just doing standard mid-course corrections. We want to get this close to the plane. Actually, that's a good point. If you don't get it in the plane, if you really know what you're going... If I could see what angle Gilly would be at from this window, or from this view, then I would totally adjust my orbit to get there, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I'm just going to aim for making sure that I'm at least roughly in the equatorial, and then once we're there, we shall do some aerobraking, of course. We go forwards, do another course correction. The earlier you do your course corrections, the more fuel you save. Yes. So we corrected our inclination. We're making another slight correction here. So this is a pretty big correction, but hopefully that should be the last of the big corrections. Now we shall continue full speed ahead until we enter the sphere of influence of Eve. Actually, we don't have a choice because, it's Newtonian mechanics, and it's not like we can choose to go full speed ahead without making giant velocity changes. Look, I spy Eve. Now, we are actually coming in on the wrong side of Eve. We need to bring our orbit down a little, and initially I start putting myself down and then getting the thing to aerobrake through. Actually, technically this is aero capture. The difference between aerobraking and aero capture is the aero capture has to take you from a hyperbolic orbit into an elliptical orbit, right? So it's actually performing the capture in one pass. Now, aerobraking is less aggressive than aero capture, right? Many spacecraft that have gone to Mars, they've used aerobraking to make their orbit lower after they've got captured, but they've actually used engines for the original capture burn because aggressive aero capture is actually very hard on the spacecraft. But anyway, look, I turn my orbit through the planet, so now I've just got to pick the correct altitude. I'm picking about 65 kilometers. And now we are going to fly through the atmosphere. Now, because this spacecraft isn't designed for re-entry, I'm going to put it into a spinning attitude. This, of course, makes no difference in Kerbal Space Program, either with deadly re-entry or without it. But in real life, if you spin a spacecraft while it's heading through the atmosphere, you'll actually spread the heat out and therefore, hopefully, let it live a little longer. It will have less chance of being incinerated by the force of the atmosphere. Okay, did not quite manage the aero capture there, so let's burn and slow ourselves down a little. There we go, didn't take much to do that. Now let us get ourselves an encounter with Gilly. Of course, so you see we've wasted a bit of fuel, but having that Rockamax tank and the nuclear engine and just that tiny capsule to move, that gives us a lot of delta V, right? I mean, we can go a lot of places. This thing will actually go all the way to Joule, and you can probably get it onto one of the moons there. I'm not sure if it has enough to get back because I've never done it. I am just going to Gilly because it's nearby and because, spending lots of time in time acceleration is dull as dishwater. Yeah, nevertheless, I'm just gonna adjust, setting up a maneuver node so I can adjust my inclination. The idea is we'll get ourselves into an adjusted orbit and then make the two encounter. You see that? Bang! Beautiful, huh? So we'll fly around, we'll encounter Gilly, and then we'll get ourselves into orbit. We're not going to be aligning planes until we're actually getting into Gilly orbit. And And where are we? Just waiting, countdown to the maneuver node. And hopefully I don't overshoot because I had a terrible time overshooting. There we go. Fire those engines. Bring ourselves down. And do we get it? Hey, nope. Just burn a little more. Bingo! Now we have encounter with Gilly. And from there, of course, it's really easy to get into orbit. It's just another zip around. Here we go. Add maneuver. Okay, so now set ourselves up for capture. We basically put a maneuver node and just fire at retrograde. And I think I overdid it, so I keep messing around. But honestly, I don't care because I'm just using the maneuver node as a countdown timer. I do this a lot. I set up a maneuver node and then don't actually use it because I really just want to know how long it is until I reach periaps or apoaps or whatever. In this case, I don't care because I'm just going to kill my lateral velocity completely. Like, I'm putting myself into an orbit and then I'm just like, forget that. I'm just going to completely overdo it. There, I'm just going to fall straight down now. And it's interesting to see how fast Gilly appears to rotate compared to its gravity. I mean, Gilly isn't rotating faster than it isn't rotating so fast that it would fly apart, but because we're so far out, it takes a long time for Gilly's gravity to really bring us down. And in fact, we have to be very careful. This is a very, very, very slow and tedious process landing on Gilly. A lot of the time, if you kill velocity at some altitude, you literally won't crash. I mean, the hard part with landing on Gilly is the eternity you have to wait once you get below the 8 kilometers altitude that forces you out of time acceleration. I mean, I'm falling at like 10 meters per second, and I doubt the ground here is more than a couple of kilometers up. So this is like easily 500 seconds, which is, 10 minutes almost. 8 minutes. Same amount of time. 500 seconds is how long it takes light from the sun to reach the Earth. It's a curiously round number. I mean, it's not exact, but it's pretty darn close to 500 seconds. But yes, there is the surface of Gilly. I put on ground scatter. Everybody, I occasionally get asked, why do you get the rocks, or how do you get the rocks? It's in the settings menu, terrain scatters. It's under work in progress, and I'm presuming it's a work in progress because if you hit them, you just pass straight through them. So you don't actually hit them, which is kind of disappointing. I mean, if they did actually cause problems when you collided with them, I bet you a lot of people would turn them off because you wouldn't want to have your lander smash into them. That would just make things harder. So here I am, just landing on this hillside. It's very hard to tell what angle there's. Yeah, look, it's just terrible. And yeah, so one of the things with Gilly is because the gravity is so low, you can't wobble it around like on its tail. If you try to torque most spacecraft, the tail will move, the whole thing will move around the center of mass rather than pivoting around the point contacting the ground. So I decide to fly uphill and see if I can find a much flatter spot on the top of the hill here. Look at this, just it's just kind of amusing to watch this thing. I could totally get out of this. I should like EVA out of it and just watch it kind of bounce leisurely across the landscape for a while. Of course, we know that if we did have problems, we could probably EVA back, although don't have a parachute on this because it is entirely stock. I have not even permitted mechanical Jeb to sully the purity of this build. But and here we are. Let's try landing this again. Maybe this looks a little flatter. No, it's not flatter at all. Nope. Yeah, I think we'll just have to leave that there. Maybe if I turned on ASAS, it would actually hold, but I don't have ASAS because that would be another part, and adding another part would just make my achievement, diminish my achievement somewhat. Well, it said, look, let them run on the... Oh, I thought I could run on that like a barrel, but as soon as I pushed forward, he just went flying. Great. Oh my goodness, that's rolling towards me. It's like a slow-motion Indiana Jones, giant crushy ball thing. Okay, well, let's get ourselves back into the air again. Or back into space. Obviously, Gilly is too light to hold any atmosphere. So that's us visited Eve. We've flown past Eve for the aerobraking. We've landed on Gilly. And so that's 2 destinations from this tiny ship, but I think we shall return back to the Kerbin system. So we're going to send ourselves up and put ourselves into an orbit which is close to Gilly, but will not encounter Gilly. We don't want to change it too much because, of course, that will require delta V. And we can't sit on the surface of Gilly and time accelerate because apparently it doesn't think we're ever landed. So, yeah, just going to adjust the orbit outwards a little. We can always adjust it inwards later. Oh, got it backwards because I had the surface velocity clicked rather than the orbital velocity. There, okay, so now we can just sit on that orbit until we get our our return window back. And you see that we're now 300 plus days, I believe. So we're now going to be heading back to our planet. Heading back to the planet Kerbin. So we can have our triumphant return on the Reddit forums, right? Where we've managed to beat hardcore mode by, half. By a factor of 2. So, of course, we're in this wide orbit. We need to bring our Eve periaps down so that when we thrust, we get more energy. Courtesy of the Oberth effect, our old friend. Yes, that's it. The Oberth effect, giving you more energy for your thrust. So yeah, that will of course help us, get out using the least amount of thrust. Not that we need to spare it, we have so much in this thing. But the more we bring back, well, maybe there's other things we can do. Well, of course you'll find that out soon enough. Yeah, swinging by, taking one last visit to the upper reaches of Eve's influence. Just setting ourselves up, and we thrust, and you see it doesn't take very much. It takes less than 100 or so meters per second to get onto this return trajectory. In fact, this maneuver is so efficient, the correction burn is ultimately going to take more thrust or more delta V than the actual maneuver. But that's okay, we do it, we escape. Say bye-bye to the purple planet and its purple people eater, whatever people are. Thankfully, I hope they don't eat Kerbals. Anyway, yes, getting our orbit aligned and fixed, and listening to double, quadruple speed music is really interesting. Hey! We got ourselves an encounter. That will surely be our ticket home. Our ticket to a new life of hero's status back on Kerbin. Just run down and hopefully don't miss my node a little. I might have run a little late. But yeah, look, it was like almost 300 meters per second. Over 300 meters per second, which was versus 200 to escape. That really is important to be able to figure these things out exactly. And just try to get the encounter as close as possible. So I'm now never mind the maneuver node, we're just going to adjust it until we get relatively close to the plane, because we want to control our return to the Kerbin system sufficiently so that we can go on to do greater things. Now, just adding another maneuver node to figure out what way will bring our encounter distance down the closest. We want to bring it inside the atmosphere, of course. And that will give us an option, depending upon how much fuel we have left. And there we go, look at this. Hello, Kerbin, I see you chasing me as I'm reaching the furthest most point in my orbit, my aphelion. I am moving slowly and you're moving quickly. I see you catching up on me, and I also see that my orbit needs some tweaking. I think I might have messed this up, but I adjust my orbit a bit so when I get there I will be going the correct way around it. Or at least that's what I thought I was doing. No, there's Kerbin there. Look at that. You see, with its moons. And now we have an encounter. And yeah, I got it ass backwards, didn't I? So I now need to recorrect to where it was before I did my correction. As I said, we have a lot of delta V on this thing. A lot of this is simply because the UI isn't there. Or maybe the thing spontaneously changed. I don't know. Look, we're now going to encounter going the same direction as the moons, which means we can aero brake once again. Oh no, wait, it's not aero braking, it's aero capture. And if I get this just right, well, if I get it just right, then I make an awesome fireworks show for all the Kerbals back on the ground. But no, if I get it just right, I can come out the other side, and I have more than enough delta V to let's pay a visit out to Minmus. Because that was one of the other objectives, and I think most of the entries have gone to Minmus. So I might as well join them there as well, just so I can kind of, you know, just so I can kind of show off. It's like, oh yeah, where have you been? Oh, you came straight from Kerbin. Yeah, I came here via Eve and Gilly, you know. No, it's awesome. I love these Reddit challenges. I really should actually make more videos of these things. A lot of the time a challenge goes up and I'm like, I think I've already done this one. A lot of the time I'm just quite happy to sit with my existing, you know, reward. I think a reward for using my airplane, for my Edgar Allan probe aircraft, the Raven, launching Edgar Allan probe. Anyway, we're going to get ourselves into this orbit, and now I want to set myself up to encounter Eve, of course. Not Eve, Minmus. Just tweak around. I'm just trying to figure out the best way. Go in, go out to adjust my encounter time. Listen to the music going 4 times as fast. I'm glad they're playing slow and gentle music, because if they were playing gabber techno and I was playing at 4 times regular speed, I think it might sound more like, you know, construction work. Ah ha ha, there we go. So, one last burn. And then you see how the encounter points are getting closer and closer, and I think that's close enough. Time to make one last adjustment and get ourselves into orbit around Minmus. Minmus, my favourite target, because it's close by. No, seriously, it's very easy to get to, and it's so gentle in the landing gear. Ooh. The music sounds different. Ah, yes. And so now we are actually going the right way around this thing, but I'm going to bring myself down a little because, well, you know, the Oberth effect, right? If we get this thing as close as possible, it'll make the whole encounter business a lot easier. Oh, might have overdone it just a touch. Hello, Minmus. I'm just here. We're just going to slow down. I know I brought a nuclear rocket, but, you know, you're all lifeless, so I hope you don't mind. Not that you can mind, because you're just a moon, right? Yeah, let's put ourselves into orbit and then look for a nice place to land. We have to be careful, obviously, with our periaps on Minmus, because the terrain is so irregular and high. Now I'm just looking for a frozen, or a flat lake bed, or whatever, on the light side. I've seen a couple there. Oh, excellent! Now we have our target. And it's go for a landing. Of course, this one is going to be a little harder, because if we fall over in this, I'm pretty sure that we won't be able to put our thing... we won't be able to just turn out a vertical. So we actually have to get this landing right. We have to land this horribly, you know, top-heavy, ungainly vehicle onto the tiny tailpipe. Oh, yes. Just doing it as carefully as possible. 765, 4 meters per second. At least we have a good estimate of the altitude. Always. There's a shadow there. I see a shadow! Picking up your shadow, and touchdown! Excellent 2-point landing there. And I am stable, so I can get out for a fly around. Yay! Stretching my legs once more. Long way into this mission, huh? Okay, 400 and something days, and that was his only second time he spent outside the capsule. So into orbit we go, and we surely are ready to go home. Because we've visited 2 places. We might actually have enough Delta Vs to visit somewhere else, but maybe not come back. Maybe that should be my next challenge. Visit both Duna and Eve on the same mission using this vehicle. 10 kilometers up. Get myself into a circularized orbit. There we go. Now we're safe. Now we need to figure out how we get our ejection vector. I'm just gonna manually fire the ejection, I think. Or maybe not. No, okay. I guess I didn't. Obviously I have to do this in post-production because it's 2 hours long, damn it. You really want to watch me talk for 2 hours? My voice would be hoarse. I don't have enough beer to keep me lubricated for that length of time. Now, okay, so we haven't visited the moon, so let's do a flyby of the moon. That's one thing I'd like to do. We actually have probably enough delta V to consider landing on the moon, but the vehicle is horribly top-heavy and not stable, so landing on the moon would probably stick us there forever. But maybe not. Maybe I could lift off from the moon. I should probably give that a go. At least for comedy purposes. Oh wow, this music sounds really fast, weird. It's like a super fast arpeggiator. It's like the 80s where, you would have different equipment from different manufacturers and they both used control voltages, but they all had different clock speeds. MIDI hadn't been standardized, and sometimes you would buy drum machine from manufacturer A and connect it to bass machine from manufacturer B, and the bass machine would be running twice as fast. That was sometimes exploited with things like the TB-303. Anyway, yeah, never mind, that's a whole music thing. We have an encounter with the moon, so we will at least be able to fly past. I should probably try landing on this sometime, but not today, no. Just get ourselves nice and close. We want to be close enough to see anything on the surface. I can see the moon, I can keep track of it, where it's going to fly around a couple of times. But this time, it is coming up fast. Where is it? There it is, there. There we go, we're entering the sphere of influence. And we've got a rather interesting polar encounter. We could actually go into orbit, but I think this video went on long enough. I just didn't want to continue going places. Perhaps I wasted my opportunity. There we are, skimming across the surface. Oh, how desolate and beautiful it looks. Beautiful desolation, that is indeed the phrasing that was used by the Apollo astronauts. We're just gonna zip out the other side there. Do you see that? Flying over the top and into a relatively inclined trajectory over the Kerbin system. Once we escape, all we want to do is go home. So it's a question of just killing our orbital velocity and bringing our orbit vector onto the surface. It looks like periaps is going to be on the dark side, so I overdo it basically. I decide to come straight down, so make sure that I actually land on solid, on the light side, because trying to land in the dark can be a little hard. Look, that is some crazy fast velocity here. Of course, we get a Mach effects for but a second. Now we're descending under. Watching the atmosphere slow us down. We just got to wait until the last minute. We actually have tons of fuel. Even with the horribly inefficient engine, we still come down with 36 units left. Oh well, so much for that, 36 units. Well, that's great. Well, I'm Scott Manley, and I have in fact just visited 2 planets and passed 2 others. That was my challenge entry. And this is Bergen Kerbin, who's just landed a nuclear-powered spacecraft and crashed it in the middle of the desert. And so there's one thing to do. Get as far away from it as possible. I am Scott Manley. Fly safe.